So in terms of laid off staff, um, are you allowed to top up? Say you decided, I guess this is kind of a different, the answer may have already been answered, but I'm just going to ask it. Are you able to top up EI or CERB?
EI, certainly you're entitled to top up
Sure.
if you have registered to do so.
Okay.
And that's the problem that most dentists will find themselves in, is that they haven't registered to do so.
So
Most employers haven't registered to do so at all.
do you have to register to do that before you put someone on EI?
Well, I think you can register at any point once they've been placed on EI. What I'm not so certain about, because this is all uncharted territory, is whether or not you could then retroactively apply that to what you've been paying them. But yeah, there's no prohibition on applying at some other point during the layoff period. And yes, you can top them up so long as you're approved to do so.
Yeah.
How long that approval process will take at this point is anyone's guess, because I anticipate there's significant strain on the system.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I read yesterday 1 million people applied for the CERB on Monday alone. So
2.5 million for EI over the past 2 weeks, I think.
That's a big chunk of our population. So in terms of around the same kind of theory, thought process, I've been asked by a couple colleagues, like, say you have a staff member who's on, and I'm going to say usually it's our dental assistants, because that's that are on, that these are the people that this would fall into criteria for. You have them either laid off or they're on CRB or EI. Can you bring them in to do, say, a specific job? Can they bank hours? Are you allowed to pay them a certain amount of hours before it affects them? Do you have to rehire them, or can they volunteer to do it? What is your, like, if we go through that scenario, which, as a dentist, we're only seeing emergency care. Most of us are not very good at working by ourselves. We have very good assistants that handle a lot of stuff for us. We don't know where anything is in the office. So we often, so so if we go back to the first part of that question, can you have them come in to work, specifically come in for a specific job?
Yes,
okay.
You can. I highly doubt that you'll have enough work for any of your assistants to impact the entitlement to employment insurance.
Okay.
But what that would impact if you brought them in for a day of work is the amount of employment insurance that they're paid. And so for every dollar that they earn from you, it reduces their EI entitlement by 50 cents.
Wow.
Okay. But at the end of the day, they'll always be better off doing a day's work for you than remaining on the EI benefit for that day or that week. And so what I'm finding with the overwhelming majority of my clients is that they want to find ways to help their staff members. Mm-hmm. Dentists, at the end of the day, the majority of you are good employers, okay? And that you have close working relationships with your staff members. So I find that a lot of my clients are asking a lot of these questions about how can I get some extra money in their pocket? And really the simplest way to do it is to get them to come in and do some work and pay them for it. So in terms of banking hours and volunteering is a no-no. Okay, if they're coming in and doing some actual work.
I agree with that.
No way. Okay, yeah. Banking hours, I think is more trouble than it's worth. Again, at the end of, pardon?
Is it technically legal to do that?
It's a bit of a gray area, I think, at this point. I wouldn't, because often when you're talking about banking hours, you're talking about vacation time.
Yeah.
And that's not really what's going on here. You're getting them to come in and do work, and you're telling them they can bank it and be paid for it at a later date. That just doesn't pass the sniff test for me. So again, if you want to help your staff members out by getting a couple of extra $100 in their pocket for a given week, that would be an excellent opportunity. That's a win-win for everyone.
Now, so if you bring them in, do you have to rehire them on whatever software you're using? Like I use a payroll software. And do you have to issue another ROE after you do that?
No. Well, it depends on how much work you bring them in for. There are percentages. I think it's between 90 and 10%. And so no one's going to qualify for that. They're going to fall into this other area where they're still collecting EI and collecting wages from you as well. And so, no, you don't have to issue a new ROE. You do need to pay them as if it's on payroll. And then they have a reporting obligation to employment insurance to say, I earned X amount of income this week at my clinic. And then, as I said, EI will just do the arithmetic to figure out what their benefit is for that week. It doesn't impact their entitlement moving forward. If they don't work for you the next week, then they're back to that whatever max EI is for them.
Okay. So that answers, for me, a lot of the questions for that. I have a couple things that I want to ask questions about. Hopefully this is sooner than later, but when we come back, there's some questions that, me and my friends, colleagues have talked about. What do we do when we come back? So when we do return, and there's three questions that I have basically, that I have in terms of returning. One, what if one of your staff members doesn't feel safe to come back and says, I don't want to come back yet? What are your options? Like,
and I'll speak to Ontario, but every province, if people are watching this in other provinces, every province has a similar framework. But under the Occupational Health and Safety Act in Ontario, employees do have the right to refuse work in an unsafe workplace. It's not as simple as that, just saying it's unsafe, though. I don't want to come in because for whatever reason, I feel like I might be exposed to something in your clinic that, could cause me to become ill. You can't just stay home and say that. There's a process under the Occupational Health and Safety Act that you need to go through with respect to a work refusal. And so it needs to be reported and investigated. And while this is being investigated, you're not entitled to stay home. You actually have to come to the workplace. Okay. And the reality is, once you're up and running, which will happen, it'll happen hopefully sooner rather than later. Once you're up and running, I can't envision a situation where a staff member is going to be able to refuse work based on an unsafe workplace complaint because of the COVID-19.
Okay.
You're shut down. You've been shut down, and it could be weeks upon weeks upon weeks upon weeks. By the time you're actually up and running again, society will be back to normal. So why would an employee have a right to say that your workplace in particular is unsafe?
And then and what happens if you want to increase your hours to make up? Because I've already seen a backlog of trying to fit people in a very busy schedule. Can you extend your hours unilaterally? Well, my staff all have employment contracts. I guess it depends what it says, but go ahead and answer that. What are your entitlements to saying, we're going to work, instead of working till 6 today, we're going to work till 7 because we need to make up some hours?
So I think first and foremost, from a practical perspective, I highly doubt you're going to get much resistance from your staff members, because people are going to be chomping at the bit to get in and start working and making as much money as they can, right? And so I doubt that there will be an issue, but I guess in certain circumstances, let's hypothetically say that you're open, but the schools haven't opened yet. And you have parents who are working in your workplace that say, that's great. I wish I could work until 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, but I don't have childcare. I think that's where you could run into some issues. Again, this issue of constructive termination comes up. Have you so fundamentally altered the work contract that it's not what anyone bargained for at the outset? Would this allow them to say, I'm not working here anymore, I can't give you those hours, and claim that it's a constructive dismissal? Probably not in the circumstances. I think that would be a difficult argument to make out from a plaintiff employee side lawyer's perspective. Is, okay, you've been off for a period of time, you were on EI or CERB or whatever, 75% of your wages. Here's a clinic that's open and offering you an opportunity to make more money. I just don't see how that's going to be a constructive termination in the normal course. Of course, as I said, if there are childcare obligations, or let's hypothetically say that you had an employee who was on modified hours to begin with because they have some sort of illness or disability, you're not going to be able to tell that person to work more hours if it's not medically recommended that they don't. But just for your normal employees who don't have any restrictions, they're not seeking any accommodation in the workplace, you'll likely be able to increase their hours. And certainly I would encourage every dentist to have that discussion with their staff members if it's something that they're open to, because most employees, as I said, are going to jump at the opportunity.
Now, what happened? So the last question I have, unless Natalia has anything to ask, but the last question I have is same thing. You're coming back and, employee says, you know what? I've decided that I'm happy at home. I don't want to come back at all. I'm just going to resign. What do dentists have to do at that point? Just so they know.
If that's the case, that would function as a resignation.
Okay.
And so they wouldn't be entitled to any termination pay or anything like that. They couldn't try and constitute it as a dismissal of any form. That's a decision that they're making to leave the workplace. So your obligation to them would be nothing at that point. Now, what I can also say about that is, having been stuck home over the last little while with a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, probably not going to have many employees say that either.
Nope, I'm in the same boat. I come to work to record these,
That's right.
I'm a daddy teacher for the morning.
That's right. And I have one more point to add.
Sure.
It's a question that's been coming up very frequently over the last couple of weeks, is how do I extend a layoff? Can I extend a layoff? Once we start butting up on this 13 weeks, what am I supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
Again, theoretically, under the Employment Standards Act, there is a mechanism whereby you can extend the layoff period, and you can extend it to 35 weeks in a 52-week period. In order to do so, you need to meet one of a number of criteria. The easiest one is that there is an explicit section in the ESA that says, so long as the employer and the employee agree, it can be extended. Yeah. And so I've had clients over the last couple of weeks already approach their staff members to say, listen, hypothetically, if this goes on beyond the 13 weeks, let's hope it doesn't, would you be open to extending your layoff beyond that period of time? And again, the staff members have all been cooperative. I have yet to have someone come back to me and say, my staff member said, no, they won't agree to that. Now,
have that
happen? Possibly. Okay. Yeah. And then I think we get into some murkier waters at that point, because again, as I said, I don't think that the layoff is a constructive termination today. Okay. But the longer this goes on and the longer your staff members are without work, it gets a little less clear. But certainly if we start getting close to that 13-week, I think every dentist who has their staff members on a layoff should strongly consider having that discussion with them.
And is there any formal, obviously would have to need some sort of formal documentation of them signing that? Okay. That's important to know, because hopefully we're back for 13 weeks, because I'll go crazy before then. So.
That's right.
Of different things. I've binge watched way too many shows. So from there. So Natalia, do you have anything to add to that?
No, my hopes are exactly the same. I'm hoping you guys are going to get back to work sooner than 13 weeks. We're all, I think, just itching to get back. And at this point, all we can do is just stay positive, stay in front of people. I think communication right now is huge. And at the same time, I know it's hard sometimes, but the more we can do to stay positive, and beyond just connecting with patients and community, but connecting with your staff, even if it's just like a weekly call. And I think that's very important at this time.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, thank you both very much for your time. I hope people have found this informative. We're going to have a question and answer area where we can probably come back and do something at a later point in time if we get a lot of questions. We are definitely in uncharted water. So both of you, I want to say thank you very much from the Kotecha GPS Club. You can find us on different modalities if you want, and we can go from there. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.